Okay, so I'll share the screen and when we when we get back when we get closer to 10 o'clock, when our special guest shows up, then we will I'll stop the screen share. This is the same thing as the assignment that's on Canvas. It's an assignment. The only so lots of classical conditioning going on in poor Christine's brain right now. Okay, so so the reason why I say a midterm, and it's because that we're halfway through the semester. This is pretty much all we've done all semester. And the reason why what we've done all this whole time is the foundation of the way the whole philosophy works. So I'm going to shape Caitlin how to play with the yo-yo. And so we could, if you guys want to, anybody wants to try it, I've got 2 yo-yos that are easy to use here that I can shape you with. And the second thing we're going to do is I've got 4 different stimuli up here, and we're going to decide which one is a high value reinforcement for Ted. Okay. And then the last one is we have a guest coming in. So I can play the reason why this works. Or this is oops, let's take it down into the few times. So it's a really bad level quality video here. This was sent to me by a student that was working at an event at Cuyamaca. So the video quality is absolute junk because it's a Mac, somebody at the Apple sending it to an Android. Yeah, thanks for that. Can't they just get along? No, they can't. Okay. Depending on how you have the messaging set up. Yeah. Okay. They just want you to use Apple Messages. Okay, so he might react to this or not. But so watch this carefully. I'm not sure why it's not showing what the video is supposed to show. Yeah, that's him barking. Okay, so the video for some I don't know, it's not working for some reason on here. It does work on my phone, but it's grainy and I could hold the phone up to the camera, but whatever. Okay, so basically what happened, and this is we're going to start with the setup for this third question up here, because you kind of need to think about this as we're going. So okay, so let me give you the rules for doing this is you have to turn this in by Friday. Okay. And Christine, if you're too busy by Friday, it's okay if you turn it in late.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, okay, so right, okay, maybe that's a good distraction for you. Yeah. So that's a heavy it's a heavy load. Keep fidgeting. Okay. So anyway, so this is due by Friday, and I really want you to talk to each other and work through this with each other if you can. Okay, and so the folks in here, you can talk to each other. And if you guys at home want to chat or you want to talk to each other, please do. You can talk, and I can actually mute this so you can just talk on the Zoom, and we won't hear the voices booming through here, but you guys can discuss this as we go. So we were at a event it was a welcome back to the college event some point last semester, trying to get a bunch of high school kids in, right? I hit record already. Okay. And what happened is our mascot, the coyote, shows up. And I'm like, oh, cool, the mascot. One of the goals for Halloween last year was we're going to dress Ted as a coyote and have him walk around as our campus mascot with the big ears and a little Acme rocket on his back, because that's the way coyotes evidently do things in the Bugs Bunny land. And that's the only coyote costume I could find. So we see the coyote. Ted and I walk up to it. Ted, and I apologize, loses his shit. I've never seen him react the way he reacted to the coyote. hair went straight up all over his body, tail not curled, straight out the back. Different than bouncy, grouchy, scared, or I'm going to scare it. Scared is tail down between legs, which I have not ever seen him scared. Oh, I take that back. I have once. There was a really loud bang at our house at one point when my son knocked something over, like a barbecue or something outside, and he like it startled him, and his tail did go down. So he does have that behavior, but because he's around us all the time, he's not really scared by much. But what did the giant creature do for him? But it definitely produced a response that was very unlikely. Have you guys heard him bark once this whole semester? Right? You remember what he was barking at? At Kovu. Sorry, Kovu. Okay, but so you've heard him bark at Kovu, but the bark at Kovu wasn't a angry, scared bark. It was like, hey, what are you doing over there? Bark. It's a different, the one that the bark that he barked at the coyote actually scared the person in the coyote suit, because he thought, oh crap, this dog's gonna try and, sick balls. Okay. So at 10 o'clock, the coyote is going to come in. So we're gonna, and so okay. So what we're gonna we're gonna help set up a situation so that, and this we're gonna kind of do this first. We want to set up a situation. So what steps do we need to follow to change his I'm afraid of the coyote behavior? So we're gonna do this one first, because the coyote has things to do, evidently, and can't just be bopping about class all day.
Quick question.
Yes,
So
sir.
is that then example of biological preparedness? Because if you never saw
it could be,
before,
it could be the fact that if he sees a dog that's much bigger than him, so he is going to be ready to fight or flight, right? Okay. Hello. It wasn't the coyote. We're okay. I heard the door. I'm like, okay. So it could be, but it could be an unconditioned response to the large creature. Right? So it could be, and whatever it is a very strong response. This is also in the assignment as well. So this is the same as in the assignment. Okay. You okay? Okay. Wait. Okay, there we go. That's why I put it there, because you have to, some people need a little bit of motivation, and yes. Yeah, you're just not exhaling enough. You just keep inhaling, and I'm just like, okay. So okay, so this is what I want you guys to kind of discuss. Is so the first thing when trying to extinguish a behavior, the first thing is we have to look at what is the stimulus control in the situation. So Kovu said, okay, so maybe this is a biological defense mechanism. Maybe this is that thing is big and scary, I don't know what it is, so I'm going to protect. Okay. So the person wearing the person has a Middle Eastern name, and it can be masculine or feminine. So I don't know if it's a boy or girl in the suit. Dang it. Anyway, so we'll find when they're about to come in, they're going to text me. Okay. And so when they text me, I'm going to have them take the hat off and come in. Right. So why do that? So how does that fit? So maybe he has a thing against this person. It's not the same person in the coyote suit every time. So he doesn't really have anybody he dislikes on campus. There are lots of people who dislike Ted, but Ted doesn't dislike anybody.
Would that be?
He never had a negative reaction.
Would taking the hat off be a form of blocking so that the behavior exhibited before doesn't occur now.
Okay, so the first step is determining stimulus control. The first step is determining stimulus control. So in order to determine stimulus control, what do we have to identify? We got to get a baseline of stimuli. So is the thing in the giant coyote suit a compound stimulus? Yes. So it's a compound stimulus because there's a person in there. It's big, it's moving, it has big eyeballs on it, it's got a big nose, it's got fangs, it's got long shaggy hair. Does Ted enjoy playing with stuffed animals? It's a giant stuffed animal. So you can see how this thing has a tremendous amount of stimuli that are affecting him or have possibility of affecting him. So how do we decide which one is which?
By doing trials.
So, but okay, but what do you mean by doing trials? So please be writing this down at home.
Yeah, so like if we bring the person in first without the coyote mask on, we can, like you were saying, make sure that it's not the person. And then if we bring them in with the coyote suit on and he reacts, we know it's the coyote suit instead of the person.
Okay, so what would be a way to find out? So you went from person in suit, person to person in suit. So what would be a step in between those two that we could determine if to see if it's something else? Okay, so the person could be a real person versus okay, so that maybe so having vocalizations, maybe she or he could say, we'll find out in a minute. We'll find out. Maybe they could say his name and call and say and pet him and say good boy. And then when the head shows up, repeat that same stimulus, possibly.
Head and all that without speaking, and then he's on the causes and also doesn't speak. But then, like on the next time, have him come in without speak, and then put on the suit and speak again, and see what's the difference.
So the problem with that is that if he has a reaction to the suit, he reinforces his animosity toward our mascot. Okay, so you missed that part. He doesn't like the coyote. Yeah. Okay. And so so if we try to bring the coyote head in to see how he reacts and he has a negative reaction, what do we do for the extinguishing of behavior? You reinforce the barking at the thing behavior. So our goal is to suppress, and now I can tackle him and drag him away screaming, which I did the last time the coyote was around. And then we learned response prevention. At graduation, the giant coyote was around, and Ted and I were lurking about graduation. He was wearing a tie. He was very dapper. And every time the coyote was nearby, I went the opposite direction using distraction and snacks. Okay.
So then that would be, if going the other way is a negative reinforcement, but snacks would be a positive reinforcement. So couldn't we just use a reinforcement to overshadow his stimuli? I mean, his response to the stimuli?
But if his reaction to the thing is strong enough, because we know based on his latent inhibition, what's more fun, food or toys? Toys.
Play
Okay, we've seen that to my badness. But okay,
right.
so we know that the reaction, the emotional reaction that he gets to things is greater than the emotional reaction he gets to food. Okay, I heard the door.
So can we then make it a game?
See if it's the critter. Thank you.
Can we then make it a game? I'm trying to think of the term for that.
Wait. So make it a game. Not yet. Okay. So why would we make it a game?
Because play is his highest reinforcer. So if we make it into that, then we can get hit. We can, what is the word? It's there. It's in the envelope. It's not coming to me.
Okay,
But,
so Tini just said it. So making a positive association, right? Changing the negative association to a positive association, shaping the positive association, which is incompatible with the anger association. That's what it's called.
The other day.
Yeah. Yeah, differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior. Play is not the same. Did you get that, Chrissy? It's called DRI, differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior. Well, that's differential reinforcement of a low rate of behavior. Hello. Okay. So if we want him to like stop barking, we reinforce him when he's quiet. By constantly reinforcing him when he's quiet, if he does bark, we don't reinforce him. But if you constantly reinforce him when he's quiet, then he knows that being quiet is the highest likelihood of getting reinforced. Oh, wait. Okay. Oh, that was it. Hi, James. Okay, that would be, yeah, we have an FR1 of being quiet, and we try to have, the problem with barking is, does barking cause reinforcement? Yeah, because somebody comes over and says quiet.
It's like what you said about holding the leash and being tense.
Yeah, that becomes the reinforcement that if I'm, and it's really funny because sometimes I'll do a yoink against the leash. Like if he runs too far ahead, I'll hold him and then I let go of the leash and let him sprint off and then yoink it. Okay, I'm waiting for them. Hey, Camilo. Hey, the sound still doesn't work. The sound still doesn't work. I have to use this cam. It does for a while and then it disappears. And
You're hearing or them?
them hear me. So I use the webcam mic and it works fine if I stay here.
It works better right now. They need to come out and tweak some settings on these. But
Okay.
So I stick with that mic for now.
Yeah.
That happens. It was supposed to happen last week. And
I've heard that before, huh, Ted?
yeah.
Yeah. We have the coyote coming in. Have you seen Ted react to the coyote? Yeah, he doesn't do well with the coyote. So we're going to teach him not to kill the coyote. To laugh and walk away. Appreciate it. Yeah, great. Okay. So if it's an anger reaction to the coyote, if we change that reaction to a happy reaction to the coyote, incompatible behavior, but would it also cause Ted to want to run and jump on said coyote because he likes to run and jump when he's happy? Yeah, once he's comfortable enough. So that's what we're going to do. And that's so, it's funny, Christine noticed this right outside. What's sitting outside? The frog. You guys see the frog walking in? It's become an S+ for you guys too, which is great. Did you see it when you walked in? Oh, okay. So I'm just curious because it's just sitting on the table out there. So the goal is that when they come in, they're going to take the head off and show up with the frog. Now, if the person is not the most comfortable with Ted, what will happen? Ted will understand that whoever has the frog is not fun, is scared. So this is one of the reasons why would I have my big leash attached to Ted when we're doing this?
So you could have him interact with coyote without your influence.
Oh, I have influence. You have sure.
On Monday about like how like far you're letting them like explore and like.
So we like the word boundaries, but it's response prevention. I'm not going to let him attack the coyote. So why have the longer leash associated with it?
Because,
Allow,
oh, go ahead.
allow Ted to like get close and like look at the coyote, like, be like, okay, how do I feel about this? And then depending on what the like reaction that he's gonna have, to like know whether to like hold back or like not.
I can control the position relative to the coyote. So I'm under more control over him. And by allowing me to have control over him, it gives me more stimulus that I can predict in the situation. This is why for the Me Bee place, they want you to work in the facility as opposed to in the kid's home. Because
More predictable stimuli for you.
very predictable stimuli. You can control all the variables in a particular environment. That's why when we don't train him necessarily at home. There's too many S pluses at our house for him to train. And no offense to our other little white fluffy dog, God, she's such an irritating trying to train. When I was cutting these up this morning for Ted, she was at my feet, walking in circles around my feet like a cat. And she sampled each one and enjoys all of them, because food for her is a huge S plus. And I purposely didn't give any to Ted because I want these are not novel, but they're new for this situation. He's had all of these before, but they're going to be new for this situation. And I don't know out of these which one he likes the best in this situation. So we'll figure that part out in a few minutes here. Okay.
Is the big chain, is the big leash, would that be considered a when he runs and you pull it, is that like a punishment by application?
Yeah, that is, well, it's a
Or
response
positive
prevention.
punishment?
I'm not gonna yoink on it enough to punish him.
No, I mean,
So
I know it's not to hurt him, but I mean, like that the adverse response is still he doesn't get to go where he wanted to go.
if you, I mean, you felt how big he is, right? It's
Yeah.
really not averse to him because he's been on a leash enough.
Okay.
So in order for something to be considered a punishment, it has to be aversive. It has to cause fear. It has to cause pain. It has to cause avoidance. So he just knows that that's as far as I can go. And so like if I just let him run now, he'll just keep running. But as soon as he feels a resistance on the leash, he'll stop. But like I tie him to this little weight sled at the gym. I just put his leash around one of the pegs on this little, it's a thing you push to get stronger. And it's got, I think we broke an 80-pound dumbbell. The one end fell off. So the other end of the 80-pound dumbbell is capped on top of it. So that keeps his leash there. So it's like 40 something pounds. He can drag it around if he really wants to, but he doesn't because he feels that tension and he stops.
So
And
it's
every
more of
so
a
often, the
negative
other
reinforcement.
dog that's there will tease him, and Ted launches at the other dog and pulls the sled about a foot or two, but he won't actually pull the sled around, even though he can, because he's learned that pulling doesn't get me anywhere. And so you see how that's not an aversive, it's just not reinforcing to pull.
That's what I'm saying. So like, is it rather than a negative reinforcement?
It's not a negative reinforcement. It's just once he feels the tension, there's no reinforcement for pulling.
Okay.
It removes the S plus when he feels the tension.
Okay.
Good timing. Oh, that's it. That was my Verizon bill's ready. Darn it. So this is a fixed interval schedule. The closer it gets to 10 o'clock, what happens every time there's sound out there? So Justin, you come in. Ah! Oh, it's like, hey. Yeah, but it's like, but the idea, but you can all feel the fixed interval schedule closer and closer to the actual interval. The big coyote's coming in at 10.
What?
Yeah. The mascot.
Oh, I was about to say there's a kite.
The big ass coyote. Anyway, so we haven't told Ted yet because he doesn't speak English, so it's okay. Yeah.
Can you repeat punishment?
So in order to extinguish a behavior, we're not going to apply a punishment to Ted. The reason why is punishment produces an avoidance contingency. And if I provide a punishment, the avoidance can be whatever the dog figures out at that particular second is what's the most reinforcing. So like it could be run away, it could be attack, it could be jump, it could be just bite Christine, because the way your week's been going. It just could be, it just could be whatever. But we don't know, we can't predict. If you just apply a punishment, there's no way to predict exactly what the reinforcement's going to be after you apply the punishment. So in our heads, we say, well, you have to punish them. We had a really good discussion about schools in Iraq compared to schools here. And schools in Iraq, the teachers have sticks, that all the teachers have a stick. And if you're not good, they whack you. And each teacher has their own special punishment that they use against the kids that are being disobedient and awful. And you're shaking your head because in our system, that doesn't work. But at the same time, in their system, it works really well. Poor student Sandy forgot her notebook and she had to stand by the trash can all day. And she was humiliated in class all day. It doesn't! Sorry. It makes you afraid at school. When you're afraid, you can't learn. Sorry. But it also creates a whole host of other contingencies. But if that's the way the culture is, does everybody adapt to it? To shape a positive association to counteract Ted's negative association with the mascot. Perfect. Sorry, that was loud. That's exactly right. So that's what we have. So why not use treats? They're not the strongest S+. The Coyote's a very strong S-. If I tried to use treats, like if I try to use treats to get him from bouncing on other dogs, he puts them in his mouth and goes, spits him on the sidewalk. And our other dog goes, oh, and yoinks him up. We also have these really hard, crunchy ones, like those fish ones. Our other dog can't eat those. She doesn't have enough teeth to eat those, but she'll just suck until they're gooey enough and then swallow them. Yeah.
Say that the coyote isn't even higher, like stronger S- than a frog.
Which is possible.
Would that mean then every single time that we bring the frog out after that, like,
so for the folks at home, she said it wouldn't, if the Coyote's a strong enough S-, could it counter condition is the right word, counter condition to frog to mean anxiety? Possibly. I don't think so because of the awesomeness of Genesis and Carlotta bringing the frog. And I mean, I think that's the history of the frog and the latent inhibition of the frog is going to block it from becoming a negative stimulus. Whether he even sees or notices the frog is going to be that's going to be the actual thing. So we talk about blocking. And I guess it'd be hilarious if the coyote doesn't come in. No, but you're doing it right now. That's the whole idea. And we're going to try to get it done. But if the strength of the coyote negatively is greater than the strength of the frog positively, is the frog going to work to help counter condition against the coyote? No, because the coyote is going to overshadow the positive stimulus of the frog. Can you picture overshadowing in your head where two stimulus are present? You put too many onions in your salsa and all you taste is onions. It's the same thing as like chili. If you, my friend is German and he was in India. He works for UNICEF and he's in India and he orders some eggs at the hotel and it's like 3 eggs and like 6 chilies. And he can't handle spice at all. So he goes, I can't eat these. There's too many chilies. Can you make it without chilies? And the guy goes, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Brings it back and there's like 2 eggs and 2 chilies. And he's like, no. no chilies. So the guy comes back the third time and there's like half of the plate's covered with chilies still. And he's like, no chilies. And the guy's looking at him and he finally goes, no chilies at all? And it's like, yeah. All right, here we go. All right, great. Oh, cool. Great. Okay, so hold on. Let me call real quick. Here we go. That's a lot of Kobo on the screen. Okay. Nothing wrong with a lot of Kobo on the screen, but still. Here. Let's see if they answer. It goes into until the pixelation can't. Okay, so hold on. Okay, I'm gonna just walk this way. Just wait, you're fine. Just hang out. Just a minute, honey. You're good. Just a second. Okay, so take the hat off and then come in without the hat. Okay. I'm just gonna cause like trauma. Okay, so he's doing really good. Okay, so do you like those? Okay, so we'll leave the head off for now. We're gonna come in and go over first. And you're gonna meet him and say hi and get in front of the thing. It's probably gonna try to take you well done, so that's okay. So we put it in place, okay? Okay. Hey, we got someone to see you. Who's that? Okay. So, have you met him before?
No.
Okay. He is the class. Is he friendly?
Yeah.
Okay. He is a trained therapy dog. He hasn't passed his good dog citizen test yet. Say hi. Say hi. Oh, who's that, Ted? Who's that? Oh, she's got big gloves on her head. I'm gonna say hi to you too. Teddy, Ted, come here. Come here, buddy. Come on. Say hi. Who is that? Okay, so Ted, here, come on. So, okay, how's the
Good.
reaction?
Good.
He's bouncy, he's happy, he's excited, he's wagging his tail. I knew he'd go for the gloves. Teddy, hey, no. Teddy, come here. Teddy, come here. Does she look like fun to play with? Is it good? Yeah. Okay, come here. Come on. Here. So I'm gonna put him on here. Come on. Let's go. I want to play with it. Okay, so now this is the part I put this on because he has the potential of having some fun. There is a green frog out there on the table. That for him is one of his favorite stimuli. Okay, so that stimuli produces a lot of happy dead Ted behavior. You see the dog up there, Ted? Okay, so go grab the frog. You good? If you can with those fuzzy feet on.
With the mask or without?
No, without the mask. We've got no mask right now. Okay, so look at his tail. Okay, so here, throw it to me. If you can. Who's the frog? Who's got the frog, Dad? Okay. Oh, we should have ready for that. Okay, get the frog, Teddy. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? The reason I have this on is he really loves to play chase with the frog. Good boy, Teddy. I'm gonna get the frog. I'm gonna get the frog, Teddy. Okay, so tell him you're gonna get the frog.
I'm gonna get the frog.
You try to grab it from him. So this is what he wants you to do. So now kind of chase him around a little bit. No, not around the table, but stay here. Good boy. Okay, so wait, so what you're doing is you're doing one of his favorite behaviors. He loves to play chase. He loves to really wants to eat your gloves. Okay. Okay, so class, what do we do next? Ted, here, sit. Sit. Okay, nope. Down. Hey, no. Really hard. You're very positive thing. Sit. Yeah. Yeah. All the way. Good boy. Good boy. Stay. Okay, stay. Good boy. Okay, so now, class, what do we do next?
We remove the frog and have her put the coyote head on?
Okay, so, okay, sit. Sit, bud, down, all the way. Good boy. Here, you can chew on that. Okay, so now, if she comes in with the head on, okay, that's going to be a lot of change.
Get like some, I don't know, like have her do like the down state and with the snack. How that-
The snacks are the second part,
Oh,
and I forgot the fish, so we don't have fish next. Okay, so we talked about this before. What happens if she comes in with the head on?
It'll be a giant S minus.
The big S minus. Okay, we've already demonstrated that it's a strong S minus multiple times. Ted, do not eat the frog. Okay, so now what can she do? Come on.
Did she let the head off of the frog?
Substitute frog for head.
Maybe she's brings the head in like carrying it, so wearing it.
Ah, what would that do?
It would kind of introduce the head almost like a stuffed animal rather than like a big tall person.
Okay, so folks at home, I don't know if you could hear that because the sound system's not working. Yeah, they're on. They're not. Okay, so she basically, we're trying to figure out a ways to get Ted used to the head before you walk in with the head on. Okay, so if we carry the head in, folks at home, what would that do? Crickets.
Oh no, we were sending chat stuff.
Okay, yeah, we can see that.
They're behind you. If you bring the head in by itself,
Yeah.
I don't think that'll be. Well, the head by itself is an unconditioned stimuli altogether, right?
Well, let's find out.
So I think
We have to do a test trial to find out, is it you? Is it the head or is it the head on you?
is she bringing the head in, or is like, or
she
she
will
going
in just a
outside the head
second.
is coming in?
And if we like start associating the head just by itself, what if we have her like hold the head and the frog together?
I think we need to do a test trial first of the head, because what if you try to do too much too fast, you strain the ratio and too much stimuli and the dog gets overshadowed. Oh, so go grab the head and just carry it in. Actually, why don't we, yeah, just go grab it and carry it in, because we want you to be the primary stimulus. Okay, watch his behavior. Okay, look at the tail. Bouncy, is he afraid? No? So he's booping it. No, see him boop it? Is he doing this differently than he was before? Yeah, his behavior is completely different.
It's like when he first
What's that, Ted? Come here. Yeah, come here. So we're not eating the frog. Okay, we're not eating this. Okay, come here. We're gonna get untangled first, just in case you don't hurt yourself. Okay. So now we see Bouncy. Hey, here, come on, sit. Yeah. That's called a bouncy down. It's not really like, I'm not laying down, I'm just appeasing you.
Yeah, so it's like I can follow.
But I'm gonna bounce. Okay, so good boy. You're such a good boy. Yes, you are. How come food's not gonna work with this situation?
Because he's in play.
Because he's play mode, his tail's still curled. Even though, okay, so put it on. Watch his behavior change. This is great. Okay, say hi, Ted. Good boy, Teddy. You want to say hi? Go say hi. So what actually turned out to be a better stimulus than the frog? The gloves. So can you feel what he's doing on the gloves? He's doing nibbly kisses. He's doing like he puts his teeth against him and nibble, nibble, nibble. Ted, we're not taking the gloves off. No,
Oh, yeah, one of the chats said that. I think the gloves are slowly becoming a discriminating stimuli.
Yeah, so the gloves are definitely become, that's probably Sierra said that, or Kobe? Oh, Kobe, okay, Kobe. Okay, yeah, here, wait, sit, out. So when I use the word ow, what does that mean?
Needs to stop.
It means to stop what specifically?
Biting.
Biting.
The biting.
Ow. Good boy, good boy. So what we do is when we train him to, come here, sit, hey, sit. Play mode is really hard to get him to sit, all the way.
Like, okay, then.
Fine. Okay, so, okay, can you walk out and count to like 10 and then walk back in? Yeah, with the head on. The answer is no. We should make a head that they can see out of better. We need to get one of those inflatable mascots. Anybody seen the Tennessee Titan guy or he's basically this giant inflatable suit.
Oh.
And okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. Official stimulus. Sit, buddy. Hey. Go. Come here. Sit. Sit. Okay, so this is really good. Okay. Nibble, nibble. Nibble kisses. Teddy, here. Hey, stop. Out. Come here. Come. It's a good boy. Uh-oh. Okay, so now hold this with your glove. And now we have to do a discrimination training. This is so exciting. I can't wait to run into the coyote on campus now.
There's a difference though.
There's a huge difference, and that's the next part of this. What does he choose?
The frog.
Well, let's see. Here, let it go. Let him have it. Now, if he puts the frog down and starts going for your glove again,
And the glove has a bigger S plus.
then but what has a bigger S plus?
Frog.
The frog. The frog is still a stronger S plus, therefore the frog is still a stronger reinforcement. Woohoo! Good job, Froggy. Good job, Genesis. I know your kid's sad that we stole this toy. Do not eat the frog, Jen. Hey.
My thought about this though is like the environment is like, there's a lot of stimuli in like games and stuff like that where like the massive is. So like what that affect there.
So that's going to be the next test trial. So that's going to be the next, that would be the next thing. So we know he gets tested. Now he's in play mode. Thanks, buddy. So, our next test is going to be when we run into him in public, because when we're walking around in public, he is operating under a different set of commands, a different set of stimuli. And because we're operating under a different set of stimuli, he's going to be different. Hey, Ted, nope. Sit. Hey, sit. Nope, we're done. Sit. Hey, is him moving his butt away from my hand? Okay, so that was amazing. Sorry for making all that suit for 20 minutes of awesomeness, but that's perfect. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Would you like a dog treat? I've got a bunch of different to choose from because coyotes love dog treats. What coyotes generally eat. I don't have any house cat flavored ones, so. Thank you very much. That was amazing. I'll send you guys a video. Okay. Here, Ted. You ready? Come here. We're not going to taste the mascot. Come here. Sit. Sit. Come on. Yeah. Good boy. Good boy. You're such a good boy. Okay. And they say you won't pass your test. You're amazing. Okay, so now. So do you guys have enough to write down? Checking. Okay, good. Okay, so that was that's the hardest thing that we had to do for this midterm. But you can see Kobu nailed it though. He almost do. He loves cars. Good. Dad doesn't like cars. Okay. Yeah. So the idea of trying to extinguish a behavior, trying to get rid of a behavior that has already been established is really difficult in the fact that it was such a strong reaction. And I still think it's really funny that he went right for the gloves. And anybody know nibbly kisses? What that means? Yeah, but your dogs do that to you?
My dog, my male does.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's a way of, I think, getting attention. And he does.
It's a way to stimulate that other person to play.
Yeah, it's a way to like irritate but not hurt. And so when I'm drying him off with the towel, he will start to get tense and then start doing that. And eventually, if you're ignoring him, what will he do? Bite
Bop.
me. He actually nibbles and gets a little bit of skin in there. Yeah, and this is what your pig does when he's.
This morning, God, I wanted to kick him so bad.
Don't kick the piggy.
Bite my toes.
Yeah, and it's.
And then I heard like a sharp little bit.
So that's why what was the S- that I gave him? There's an S- that I gave him. As soon as I gave it to him, he stopped.
Ow.
Ow.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry, it's okay. It's okay, you didn't. Okay. It's like, I'm not biting you. What are you doing? Okay. Okay, so that's that part. So far, so good. Okay, so the second one is let's do the treat to give him some reinforcement for being such a good sport with the coyote. I'm so stoked. The last 2 times we tried it, he went lost his poop. It was awful. So that was really good. Okay. I've got 4 novel treats up here. How do I decide which one is the best?
You could put them like along the floor and
So what is that called?
we just talked about it.
I know you did, and I answered the question about it. Oh, no, that's not it. Okay. So it has something to do with the choice. So what if I put all 4 out and see which one he wants to choose from? Well, okay, but if I put all 4 out, what's going to happen? So if I want to find the highest value and I put 4 out, anybody think about which one he's going to go for? Well, you're predicting that the hot dog is the highest value in here. Because he does get hot dogs as a regular treat, especially here on campus. He doesn't eat hot dogs at home. Okay. Okay, so we're not going to use the frog. Frog is put away to dry for now. But the reason we're not using the frog is because the frog is associated with play, and play is incompatible with training him to be a good dog. It's compatible with him being having a fun dog, but it's incompatible with him being a good dog. So if I put out all 4, we could put out all 4 and see what happens. And then you can kind of see exactly why that's not a good thing. Christine, can you put them out for me? So, because I'm gonna tether him so he doesn't go.
Could we, before we put them out, could we let him smell them and then?
No, he can smell them already when I made them this morning. So come on. So I want you to put just one, and put them about 2 feet apart in the floor in front of your table there. Just one of each little one I cut to be almost the same size. Yeah.
So would the frog be overshadowing the behavior with the mascot?
I would say the frog did win over Mascot because well, the gloves. But he's gonna associate the mascot with the gloves, not the face anymore. Because when he sees that mascot again, what's he want to do? He wants to run up and nibble. He wants to play. And that's the cool thing. He's not afraid. He's not afraid of the mascot anymore.
The fish is coming.
I want to eat that. It does smell so good. That was dinner Saturday night. Okay, so in his brain, okay, each of those, the fish is a little bit bigger of a chunk because it's salmon. And so it's hard to cut into small little chunks without it turning into mush. No, it's good. Okay, so here he is. He's tethered here. He can't get those. Does he know that something's going on over there that he wants to pay attention to? How do you know? Yeah, and he's focused on that direction. He's got his eyeballs on the stimulus.
That's what the chat says.
Yeah. Yeah, his eyes haven't moved since we opened them. He can smell them. He understands it. Okay, so go.
Oh, he moved the bag.
No, that was salmon. Hot dog next. Carrot and cheese. Okay, come here, Ted. Teddy, here. Oh, you got the treats over here. Okay, but what was the highest value reinforcement over here? No.
Christine.
Say it louder. Christine was the highest value reinforcement over there. So he ran over to see Christine first. Then he went and why? So he went to the salmon first. He walked over the hot dog to get to you are better than hot dog. Okay, good job. That says a lot. How do we know though which one is the highest value reinforcement? Because he kind of went to the one, I would suggest salmon over hot dog. Because both were in easy range, and which one did he go for?
Yeah.
So how do we test that hypothesis?
Do another trial.
Yeah, so just do the hot dog and salmon, and we'll see which one he goes for.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we're doing simple choice architecture. If you have 4 choices, you cannot figure out what choice it's making first because it could literally just be what he's close to. So we're going to shift it to 2 choice, dichotomous variables, right? 2 choice, he has to go one way or the other to get one of them. Okay, so can you put the salmon out and the hot dog? Put them equidistant. So put one right by the wheel of your there and put the other one over by the edge of the screen over here.
What was the term you used? Choice what?
A choice architecture. So there's actually something that we're going to do. It's called Bayesian logic, what we talked about in cognitive class. But Bayesian logic is making choices, and it uses all the latent inhibition and all the other things. Okay, can you stand somewhere in between the 2? Right there, good. Okay, Ted, sit. Nope, sit. Better be good dog. You gonna be a good dog? Okay. No question. Wait. Christine. Okay. Okay. So okay, so here we go. One more time here. Continue.
That's not too far.
Well, no, because they're both the same distance away from you.
Okay.
So put the hot dog where the salmon was. Come here. And put the salmon where the hot dog was. Sit. Here, sit. He goes, I like this game better than the Coyote game. Actually, he really liked the Coyote game pretty well, too.
I noticed when it got switched, he was facing one way. And just now he saw that one be placed down and his eyes hasn't moved from that. Since.
But so, Kobo, you're really paying attention pretty well to what he's doing. Oh, so crinkle the bag over by the hot dog, too.
I'm wondering maybe if a better way to figure it out is to leave both inside of a bag separately and place them down, and whichever one he goes to try to get out the most, then would say which one he likes best.
So we're gonna do this. We're gonna teach Ted to find something. We're gonna find a stink, and that's a unique stink for Ted, and we're gonna teach him how to be a bomb dog. That's one of the labs that we're doing in a week or so. So we're gonna provide a stink. I'm not gonna know what it is. You're gonna know what it is, and we're gonna teach him to find the stink, and I won't know where it is. He will. And so that's part of it. Ted, sit. Teddy, sit. Come on. Sit. Good boy. It's all right. Salmon, hot dog. But again, so it's not you. Okay, come on, here. Come on. Okay, so now, come on. You got one more to do. Is your Mac okay still?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what's the highest value reinforcement so far? So how do we know it's the salmon? Doesn't matter. We count the frequency, right? Every single time we put the salmon out, what does he go to first? Salmon. Great. Right. Okay, so now we're going to put out the cheese and the carrots. You notice he starts paying attention pretty quickly as soon as he hears the rustle. The rustle's the S+. So once we get the S+ going, excellent. And you stand in between. Yep, good. S+, good. You looking at me? What do you have to do? Sit. Teddy, sit. Because I'm not holding the treats, he's really not doing it. Ted, sit. Yeah. Hey, sit. I should have brought treats. I'm sorry. I know someone who has treats. And I can still smell the salmon. Where's the salmon? I can smell it. It's on the floor somewhere over here. Interesting. So his nose can easily know where the salmon is. So what did he, Ted, don't go out there. Ted, come here. Ted, hope that door's closed. Okay, there he goes for the carrot. So the maintenance guys have the door propped open. So she was around when Ted broke my belt to go chase the dogs. He's fast.
He's strong.
Yeah. So thank you. Okay.
The other thing is that having those.
So I could, because then it would remove the stimulus from the table, because he definitely knows, but his nose knows what's there, right? Come here, buddy. Okay, I will feed you this a little bit later, okay? Not right now. Okay, now you're gonna sit? Teddy, sit.
Yeah.
He went to the cheese and then ate the carrot out of convenience on the way back. Sit. Oh, really? Oh, now you're gonna be a good dog? Okay. So, oh, this does smell good. Here you go. So if I want to try and train him to do something, what should I use? Yeah, and wash my hands. So how did he know the salmon was where it was? Smell, he can smell it. So the stinkier it is, maybe, is the greater the S+ for him. So how could we test that? Or put the salmon on something that is not reinforcing and see if he still goes for the stink. Yeah, so put the salmon and the carrots together to see if and just let it go to see if it works. Okay, so Genesis, I don't know. So he used to eat chicken. for his, we always kind of give him a little augmented protein, but he started getting itchy and his eyes started running more. And so we took him to the vet, and so the vet says that he might have a chicken allergy. And so we switched from chicken to like hamburger. So we just mixed a little bit of hamburger with his food. And he seems to, he's not itchy. Well, he was just right there, but his eyeballs aren't gooey and he's not itchy. So we think that that's the, so he is getting steak. And he likes salmon better than steak. Okay. So we've got about 10 minutes left for the last one here. Primary condition, good, classical. Okay, what was the condition reinforcer in this particular thing? There are 4 foods, but there was a conditioned reinforcer there. Christine is 1. I didn't think about that one when I set this up, so that wasn't part of it, but it's definitely a good answer.
Actually getting able to eat them.
No, that's unconditioned. That's natural for him to eat the stuff. Did he even eat the carrot when he walked by it? Yeah. But there's one stimulus that you did that we had you do again. Yeah, you got it. The bag, the crinkling in the bag. The crinkling in the bag is a conditioned stimulus. So like even if I pick up the carrots, he immediately reacts because he knows, oh, that's a hot dog. He knows that he's going to get reinforced because the crinkling in the bag is always associated with him getting reinforced. And it's the same thing as our other little dog opening the Tupperware. She always comes to the kitchen when you open the Tupperware. She can't hear anything. She's deaf as heck, but she hears that sound of the Tupperware and she's like, which means I think it's a cognitive deficit, not a hearing loss. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so overshadowing is the difference between these two. And what is the overshadowing stimulus? Well, but why? The smell. It's way stinkier. Hot dogs are pretty damn stinky. Don't get me wrong. But the salmon is much, much more stinky. And he prefers that because he keeps going to it. Even though he can smell both equally. And we controlled for the conditioned stimulus of Christine. So he's good. Okay. So now, come on down here. Anybody else want to try this? You want to try it? Okay.
What did you say was overshadowing?
The amount of stink that the salmon has is overshadowing because it's overcoming. Okay, you got to go over here and face the camera so they can see you at home. Okay. So you want butterfly or regular? Okay. So these are yo-yos. Okay. And so these are from the 1950s. They're very cool. Do not hit them on the ground. That's your only rule. And honestly, if you do, they've been around for many, many years. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So your job is to describe the behaviors to doing this. So move this way so they can hear me better on the camera. Okay. So the yo-yo goes on your middle finger. So deploy middle finger, please, of your dominant hand. This way. Okay, sorry. Sorry, Christine, that was not you. Okay. Teddy. So what this goes on between the 2 knuckles of your hand. Okay, deploy a middle finger. Okay, and it goes between those 2 knuckles. Ted.
Oh.
Ted, go say hi. No. Go say hi. It's not toy. Okay.
I know.
Goes, but I'm not involved. Okay, wait. Hold on. Teddy, here.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I just can't bring you anywhere.
One mistake today.
He's gonna run away. Don't worry.
What did they say? Don't work with dogs and kids? Or Christine? Okay, just. Okay, don't keep chasing him. He'll just run away. So, okay, just sit down. I'll get him in a minute. Okay.
So sorry.
No, it's wonderful. Okay, so now the first step, in order to yo-yo, okay, just let it go and let it stop at the bottom. Just let it stop down there, okay? Now it's not moving at all, right? Okay, so what I'm going to teach you to do first, okay, is I'm going to teach you to turn your hand upside down, lower your arm a little bit so it's getting close to the ground. There you go. You don't want to be up like this, okay? So I want you to turn your hand over. Excellent. Okay, so that's the first behavior that we're training. Okay, so put it the other way again and turn your hand over. Excellent. Good. Now do it one more time. Is that hard or easy? Easy. Good. Okay, so start with it upside down. Put your palm up. There you go. Palm up. Okay, and now flip it over. Turn it down. Good. Palm up. Palm down. Excellent. They've got that, right? Not rocket science. Okay. The second one is a little bit trickier to explain. Okay. What you're going to do is your hands down. You're going to flick your wrist up and catch the yo-yo. Keep trying. Good. Keep going. There. Oh, good one. There you go. Good. So do you notice I'm not moving my arm up? I'm just flicking my wrist up. So just just let it go down. It'll get all twisty. Don't worry about it. Flick the wrist up. Ooh, good one. Good one. Excellent. Keep doing that a couple times. Will not worry about it. Excellent. So are they getting more fluent? They're getting better? Yeah, it's okay. They're not happen. It's just a yo-yo. It's always something that yo-yos do. And these are cool because you can just take them apart. And unknown.
Oh,
These are,
awesome.
yeah, these are Tom Coon's custom no jive 3-in-1 yo-yos that they're called smooth, smelled with 4 O's. They're that smooth. Excellent. Okay. I have a giant pile of strings just in case this becomes unknotable. Okay. Knots occur and you actually learn to enjoy untying knots because it really doesn't matter. Fishing knots suck. The yo-yo knots are just fine. Deploy back onto said finger. Okay, so the goal is, so if you can let it sit on the ground, there you go. Steady. Don't take any of those little nibbies off of there, okay? Okay, and then we're just going to take it on from on the ground, and you're just going to flick your wrist and pop it to your hand. Excellent. Try not using so much arm, just the wrist. And it'll explain really why in just a second here. We only have a few minutes left. Excellent. Okay. So now, pick the yo-yo up. You're going to hold it with the opposite hand, 2 fingers. Okay. So you're going to put the string underneath your pointy finger. Okay. So we're going to pick it up. I'm going to hold the string underneath my pointy finger. And I'm just going to wrap it up. You both perfectly wrapped it up away from you like you're supposed to. Wrap it all the way up. Are you holding the string with your finger? Oh, that's good. Is it winding up? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so don't worry about that. Okay, so now, how do we start? Palm up, right? Okay, so start palm up. Okay, so it's sitting there and the string is rolling perfectly off your finger. The string is rolling backwards. So the string wants to roll from your finger. So think about your finger curls around. So it's going to follow the string around.
Oh.
Okay. So you did yours perfectly. Okay, so now, ready? We're not going to do it yet. We're not going to let go. All you do is get a hug from Ted.
All right. Almost broke the screen.
It's okay, it's very flexible. I will attach Ted to prevent molestation of students. Okay, sit, buddy.
I think he thinks I have.
You think that's, well, this is our standard holding of treat pose.
Yeah.
Yeah, see? Okay, so now, you're not gonna let go of it. When you take your arm like this, you're gonna throw it like that, right? As soon as your hand, the yo-yo leaves your hand, right? Turn your wrist over. As soon as it hits the bottom, flick it up. Okay, so you're gonna roll it off your hand. As soon as your wrist turns this way, you're gonna turn it over and then flick your hand up. That was way too quick, a little slower. It's like the fly rods, like it's just slow and relaxed. Pow. Okay, go for it.
Wow.
Okay,
Almost.
you flicked too fast.
Oh,
So you flicked as it was going down, so when it wound itself up, just wind it back up again. You don't need to hold the string, it's already wound around there. There you go. Perfect first try. Excellent. So the criteria of success. The criteria of success is being able to do it 5 times in a row without making a mistake. Okay, so that was really good. You got it, but did you feel yourself yoink it before it was all the way at the bottom?
yeah.
Okay, so try it again. You go for it again. And you forgot to yoink it that time. Okay. That was way too slow. This one doesn't come back up, so it's different. That's why you're not using this one. Uh-oh. So, all right, can they yo-yo yet? They both done it successfully once, but what demonstrates yo-yoing? 5 consecutive yo-yos in order to make it right. So hold the yo-yo like this. And you show everybody yo. Okay, and then you put your finger over it and then you wind it up.
Oh, is that how you have to do it?
That's the string is loose at the bottom.
Oh.
And so no, you can still wind it the way you're doing it, yeah. So what did you forget to do?
No.
Yoink. So you gotta go here and then yoink it up. This one doesn't pop up. So okay, try it. Excellent. You forgot to throw it. You just went like this. And see how it's kind of going sideways?
Yeah.
So you gotta give it a little throw.
Just to create tension.
It's gotta create speed. Not enough throw. And so when you throw it, you really, like if you watch when I throw it down really hard. But I notice I actually keep my hand this way, upside down. And then when I want to bring it back up, I turn my hand over. And then by turning it over, I can pop it back up. And this here doesn't have the return thingy. Oh, you're getting there. Okay, so we are almost out of time as far as today goes. It takes a while for the coyote to walk down here in costume. But do you think you can figure out what the behavior chain is? Okay. Yeah. What is the successive approximation that I'm reinforcing them for? So you threw it out, not down.
Oh.
You let go a little too soon. So close. So you're just not throwing it down hard enough. That's the successive approximation. So once they've established the behavior, okay, so let it go all the way to the bottom again. I want you back to it. Just let it sit at the bottom. And we're almost out of time here. Okay. I just don't want you to be. Okay, let it sit, flick it up with your wrist. Too hard. There you go. That sounds like there's some twisty, naughty string in there. Okay, we got you guys. We have to go. My poor yo-yo's got lots of nonsense.
Was the blocking when you said not to move your arm?
Well, blocking in this particular case is if you've had previous experience with yo-yos, what happens?
You want to do what you previously.
Yeah, you want to do with what you previously remembered, and you can't do what you're trying to learn because it's just something that it just happens. These are some of my favorite yo-yos. They're just awesome.
Question. So
Yeah.
when Ted was going, were we supposed to be doing it for Ted or for this? So I did it for Ted, but we're supposed to do it for this one too?
So you did the shaping with Ted?
Yeah, the stuff I was writing is the stuff I was writing down. So that's what I was asking, like, so to reinforce the incompatible behavior for play.
Yeah, technically that's the last one. And again, we have to go, and I understand if you guys have to run away. But the last one was you basically, in my head, we did these in this order, in the order that they're here, but we had to backwards chain because of the time the coyote could come in.
Oh, okay.
So the coyote coming in the beginning really messed with the way that I wanted to do this. The purpose was we were supposed to shape the yo-yo, choose a reinforcement, and then have the coyote come in to talk about how to extinguish a behavior. That was the plan, but then the coyote couldn't come in until 10. And so, yeah.
Also, there are 3 separate things. We're not doing like all.
Yeah, there's 3, but I mean, honestly, they should be you could all write it the same way. It's all the same thing. Like we could, can you figure out what the coyote, with the highest value reinforcement with the coyote was?
Gloves.
The gloves. He did boop the nose a few times when he brought the head in. He's like, "You want to play? You want to play?" And that's his dog booping. But really, it was the gloves what became the highest value reinforcement about the coyote, which is great because that means he's not going to react to the coyote like he did before. We'll have to catch the coyote in the wild and test it again, but yeah.
Okay, so
overshadowing or latent inhibition or blocking, but basically if you have previous experience with learning how to yo-yo, and if you previously yo-yoed incorrectly for a long time, which most kids do, they, like, a lot of kids try to throw it down like this. Yeah. But that's why, what do I teach you first? That's why we teach the end of the behavior first. So we teach, it's not forwards or backwards chaining, because we're actually starting in the middle of the chain. So that we're starting with the hand position of the throw. To get used to that hand position of the throw, turning your wrist over and popping it up, we teach that first, then we teach the throw. Yeah. Yeah, well, so then once you write down the way that it's been shaped, and especially as a task, when you're doing a real task analysis for a real change in behavior, you have to think of what are all the little behaviors required to produce the end and have to chain each one together. It's much easier to reinforce the hand flip, but when you're trying to teach the hand flip while you're throwing the yo-yo, it's too complicated. But this makes a lot of sense. And we did arms today, and I realized how sore my forearms are after doing that. But you see how, yeah, so then we teach the flick. Once you teach the flick, we teach the wind up. Once you teach the wind up, then you teach the throw. Technically, if I was doing it a completely forward chain, I would teach you to wind it, I would teach you to throw it, I would teach you to turn your hand, I would teach you to flick, and I would teach you to catch. But that's not the way you teach it. You teach it, you analyze the task, and then do it. And someday, when we really figure out how to teach, you do that in a classroom too. It's so hard. Okay. So please, if you guys need a draft or something, please let me know before Friday. Bye, Mikhail. Let me, so I can review this before Friday. And the folks that are at home watching this, please ask and email questions.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
For sure.
But so Kovu, if you did all of those with the prompt of the dog, that's just the same. It's just as good.
Okay. I guess so, just a point of clarity. So for the task, right? Because when you just explain it, you listed like the behaviors and stuff that you did for it, right? When I wrote the task down, I wrote that the task is to shape I took the task as what is the actual task? The task is to shape a positive association to counter.
Right, but so a task analysis, so that is the goal.
Oh, I missed the goal.
That is the okay, so that's the outcome goal.
Okay.
Like the outcome goal is for them to be able to yo-yo 5 times successfully. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. But the task analysis is the detailed breakdown of
Mhm.
the particular task, so that of the particular goal. So like if I just tell you graduate college, it's like
Right.
that's your goal. But there's
Right.
a lot of tasks that require in there before you can achieve that goal. There's a lot of individual smaller tasks.
No, I got it. I did my association with the word task was different. So
Yeah, that's your military. You have a task to do the task. And you know,
it's
that's
just like, yeah. All right. Got it. Got it. Okay. I will see. Wait, what's today? Wednesday? Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
yeah. And Giselle, yes, please send a draft before you submit it. Even if you submit it and then I
Mhm.
say, hey, you need to fix this, just fix it and then resubmit it.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.